He was 17-year-old soldier the next time I regressed him, fighting for his country, France, during World War I. His left arm was blown off in an explosion, and when he experienced this, he clutched his arm and reported feeling pain. But the pain disappeared, for he realized that he had died from his wounds. Again, in the instant of that death, he floated above his body and was able to see himself at a time in the same life. He was no longer a soldier, but an observer, detached from the events he was describing. Now he was a boy, no more than 10, living a hard working but a peaceful life on a farm, with two loving parents and a younger sister who idolized him. There were horses, cows, and chickens on the farm. It was not an eventful prior life, and this life before the war. I wondered if the pain in his left arm correlated with the heart attack he had experienced both earlier and very recently. But I couldn't be sure. Sometimes it is simple to see a connection between past and present lives. But in this case, I didn't get a good follow up. I didn't have a chance to think about it for a long because suddenly he became extremely agitated. He had connected his French life to another. It is unusual when this happens. Normally, a regression leads to one lifetime, though the patient will often cover different times and events in that same life. Now he was a warrior, a Mongol or Tatar, living in Russia or Mongolia. He couldn't be sure. It was some 900 years ago. Fearsomely, a master horseman, he roamed the steppes, killing his enemies and amassing great wealth. The people he killed were often innocent young men, many of them farmers who had been conscripted into the army against their will. Like the French boy he would eventually become. He killed hundreds during his lifetime and died an old man. Without any of the regret he experienced 200 years later when he was a German innkeeper. He himself did not suffer. He learned no lessons. Those who come into later lives. The life review he did was an innkeeper seemed to be a first time he experienced contrition. His Mongol experience showed me something I had recently begun to figure out. Learning about the consequences of your actions is not necessarily an immediate thing. He would have to go through other violent lifetimes before he could feel what he had caused. How many lifetimes? I couldn't be sure. I could only count the number he reported. Perhaps he had been killed in World War I as retribution for his violent life as a warrior. Perhaps his innkeeper contrition was not enough. Perhaps as if he had changed prior to his acts of violence. He would not have come back to be killed in France. Perhaps he would have lived a long life on the farm. We discussed all this when I brought him out of hypnosis. I think he was telling me that if he had not been so violent in his past life, he wouldn't be so violent in his present life. He had gone from remorseless killer to abusive innkeeper to French soldier. Killed before he had a chance for a full life to a successful businessman who was still raging and had a severe heart problems and a high blood pressure. That day, I wrote 2 notes. The value of empathy, he had to feel what he had caused. And the heart is connecting these lifetimes. What would come next?